I am so excited to be here with you today, and I'm hoping that you see the slides that are up on the screen. Welcome to Strategies for a Successful Return, using applied educational neuroscience to support students and staff. I can't think of a more important time than right now to do just that. We want to get a feeling of who's in the room. So in the chat box, if you could just type in your name, where you're from, what your role is, that would be super helpful. I have two of my team members here today, Janine Antonelli and Jesse Fuller, who are going to be in the chat box answering all your questions, giving you resources. So please feel free to reach out to them. Thank you for being here. We know you are juggling a lot right now. There's so many changes happening, so many questions unanswered, so much uncertainty, and we know you're juggling. So thank you for making the decision to have both personal and professional slides. Here's our team. Janine, I'm Joelle, and Jesse. A little bit of Thriving University. Thriving University does professional and personal development all over the country with schools, with districts, with business organizations, all about social emotional learning, well-being, resilience. One funny thing about the three of us, our names all start with J, Janine, Jesse, and Joelle. We're all married to men whose names start with J, Jake, Jason, Joe, and all our middle names are Marie. Now, what are the odds of that happening? And we're all from alternative ed. So we have a heart for really reaching those kids that are the most challenging to reach. Both Janine and I were principals in the alt ed world, and Jesse continues to be a teacher in the alt ed world. I want you to know that in addition to getting a PDF copy of the presentation, you will also be invited to get a Google Drive folder and a toolkit, a hot linked toolkit to support today's learning. So if you would like that, just put in the chat box, I want a link, or put your email address down, and then after the presentation is over, I will share the Google Drive folder with all of the addresses that are in there. Our framework today is Strategies for a Successful Year, and we have 5 components in our framework: belonging and relationships, intentional environment, brain-based learning, adult brain state, and explicit instruction and modeling. When I was deciding what could I do in an hour, I could barely introduce those topics. So what I decided to do for you today is to really just focus on 2 of those frameworks. When you get your toolkit, there's tools for all of them. And in the Google Drive folder, oodles of resource. But today, we're going to focus on belonging and relationships and adult brain state. So what I'd like you to do right now is think about how you're feeling right at this moment. And if you looked at the screen and you see those colors, red being high energy, blue being low energy, green being high pleasantness, blue being low pleasantness, where do you think you stand? And if I add these words, if you could just type in the chat box how you're feeling right now. You might have had a bunch of paradoxical feelings. I know a lot of times I feel both hopeful and anxious. I might feel excited and overwhelmed. And I just want you to know that it is totally normal to feel that way. When we think about identifying our emotions, we actually learn to name it, to tame it. So when we get caught up in our emotions, if we just stop for a moment, pause, and say, what am I exactly feeling? That requires our prefrontal cortex to jump into gear and work. And when we do that, it lowers our emotional agitation, and it increases our self-awareness, self-regulation, critical thinking, and reflection. It's important to remember that you aren't your emotions. So when you can even change your language, language matters and little ways matter. Instead of saying, I am sad, which embodies your whole body, you could say, I feel sad. Or you could even distance it a little bit further and say, I notice that I'm feeling sad. And when you can name that, you can tame that. And this is so important because all of us are in trauma. The rapid shift from quote unquote normal life to this uncertainty, to the loss that we're feeling, people are grieving the loss of events, the loss of people, the loss of normalcy. People are grieving the loss of jobs, of finances, of just all kinds of uncertainty. And this is complicated by the fact that we can't really be together in the way that we would like to. And all of this causes a plethora of emotions. You may have seen this meme before. I love it. We're all in the same storm, but we are experiencing this in different ways. One person might be really devastated financially. One person might be very devastated by health issues for themselves or their family. So even though, excuse me, we're in the same storm, we're not all in the exact same boat. So tap into your empathy and give some grace. If there is a silver lining in this pandemic, it's that it gives us an opportunity to be better. Excuse me. The pandemic has exposed a lot of inequity. It has exposed the need for technology and for reaching students in new ways. We have the opportunity to really elevate student and staff voice to support well-being and prioritize resilience for both kids and adults. This can be the renaissance where we become more creative and more innovative in how we look at reaching and teaching kids. So before we go in any further, I'd like to just take a moment to do a focused attention practice. So I'd like you to just get as comfortable as you can and close your eyes. If you don't want to close your eyes, that's okay. You just kind of lower them so you're not distracted by the world around you. And I'd like you to just take 3 deep breaths with me. We're going to breathe in through our nose like we're smelling roses. And we're going to exhale out of our mouth like we're blowing out candles. We're going to do 3 deep breaths together. Ready? Here we go. Smell the roses. And blow out the candles. Smell the roses. And blow out the candles. Smell the roses. On this last one, really let your shoulders come down, blow out the candles. And then just gently open your eyes and come back to the room. 3 focused attention practices can shift our energy and shift our focus. When we think about our brain, there are 3 parts to our brain. We have our brainstem back here that's really all about survival. Takes care of our bodily functions that we don't think about and really is looking at, am I safe? Next, we have our emotional brain, right? The limbic system. And the main question that it's asking is, am I loved? Am I valued? Do I belong? And when those are taken care of, then we can get to our executive functioning here in our prefrontal cortex, where we start learning and planning and organizing, and asking ourselves the question, what can I learn from this? When we teach about the brain, I like to use this football analogy. So your prefrontal cortex is like your quarterback. It's in charge. It makes all the good decisions, or all the decisions, hopefully good, helps you pay attention, calls the plays, right? The hippocampus is like our coach. It remembers our old plays, the way we've done things. It retrieves information and says, hey, when you did it this way, remember that worked really well. Or when you tried it this way, that didn't work so well. Maybe you want to try a new way. And then we have the amygdala, which is like our blocker. An amygdala is a little almond-shaped structure in our brain that really sparks our fight, flight, freeze response. It is kind of our emotional headquarters, so to speak. And a blocker is great for a quarterback. You don't want to get tackled, right? And so it's important, and we want to stay safe. And the brain wants us to feel safe. But sometimes a blocker can move too quickly and get an offsides penalty, or they can really tackle someone too hard and get penalized for unnecessary roughness. In the same way, our amygdala sometimes overreacts and responds when it doesn't need to. And even sometimes some kids and some adults are in a hypervigilant state of wondering what's going to happen. And the truth is that our brain the amygdala doesn't know the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. So, for example, if you're in the movie theater and you're watching Scream and the scary person comes out and you get startled and you scream, your brain knows that you're in a movie theater or that you're in your living room and that there is no real danger, right, somewhere, but yet your body still reacts in that same way. When we can consciously give some time and space to process the input, then we have a better chance of using our prefrontal cortex to help guide us. 3 things our brain hates: chronic unpredictability, isolation, physical and emotional restraint. Guess what we're in right now? We are in a pandemic, and a second pandemic of just the flashlight of attention on all of the horrible racism that's happening. And so our brain is not knowing what's happening. We're in isolation, and we're being told we can't do things. So when we think about going back to school, we have to be really intentional about addressing what the brain needs. And what the brain needs is predictability, some sort of structure, but with flexibility, knowing that not everyone is in the same boat, right? We have to have flexibility. We have to prioritize social connection, even at a distance. There are lots of ways, and we're going to show you some today, where you can still engage with people socially without being together personally, and empower student and staff voice. When we can think this way, when we go back to our brain states of the survival brain, the emotional brain, and the executive brain, the only way to soothe the survival state is with the creation of safety, of belonging, right? The only way to soothe an upset emotional state is through connection, belonging. And the executive state, when we can make sure that those other 2 areas are taken care of, is the optimal state for problem solving and learning. I used to travel a lot for work. Now I'm home. And I'm not a great plant person yet. I want to be. I'm getting there. But when a flower doesn't bloom, when I come home and my plants are crispy or they're droopy, I don't yell at the plant and say, what's the matter with you, plant? Why aren't you blooming? I instead look within and say, oh my gosh, Joelle, is it too cold in here or is it too hot in here? Does this need more water or am I overwatering? Is it too hot, too cold? Right? What do I have to do to cultivate the climate so this plant can flourish? And what I really want us to do is think that same way about the kids and our colleagues that we work with, right? Instead of trying to fix them, how can we fix the environment? What do we need to do to make that crabby coworker excited about coming to work? What do we need to do to help that disengaged student feel connected and engaged? In education, we spend a lot of time focused on the negatives and pulling weeds. Stop bullying. Don't do this. Don't do that. But curing negatives does not produce positives. It is not enough to say, stop bullying. We must say, be kind, show empathy. Here's how you do that, right? And if we really want to grow our kids and our adults, then we have to plant the seeds so that people can be nourished in order to flourish. We spend a lot of time in education throwing out the life preserver to people who are drowning. And I say that meaning like students who are drowning behaviorally, they're getting suspended and expelled, or drowning academically, they're falling behind, or staff who are drowning and getting put on improvement plans. It's good that we do that, right? We don't want anyone to drown, so it's good that we put in some interventions to save them. But the shift I'm asking you to think about is, rather than spending so much energy over there at intervention, if we can focus more on prevention, on building the life vest, so that when people fall into the water, as they inevitably do, when we fall into life's choppy challenges, right, our ability to bounce back, because we have social emotional skills, because we have gratitude, because we have empathy, because we have compassion, those resilience factors will help us build our resilience back. There is a big focus on kids first. And it sounds good, and we're in the education business, so it sounds like it would make sense to say kids first. However, my dissertation was on teacher well-being, so I'm here to tell you that I've done a lot of research on the topic. And what we know is that teachers who are not fed, teachers who are not taken care of, can't serve students in the best possible way. Just like the oxygen mask on the airlines, right? The adult has to come first. Richard Branson said it beautifully. Clients don't come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients. And it is not different in education. If you take care of teachers, counselors, principals, everybody who serves kids, the kids will win. So the big idea here is you have to nourish the environment so that staff and students can flourish. I love this quote. It was written way before the pandemic, but it's perfect. It's possible to prepare for the future without knowing what it will be. The primary way to prepare for the unknown is to attend to the quality of our relationships, to how well we know and trust one another. So we're going to dive right in to belonging and friendships. Did you know that a sense of not belonging or loneliness is as harmful to your body as smoking 15 cigarettes a day? Say, what? I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. And when I say loneliness, I'm not talking about being alone. I love being alone. I'm talking about the loneliness you feel in a room full of people. I'm talking about when you feel like you don't belong, it is physically harmful to our bodies. And yet, when we feel like we do have that support, our stress level, our cortisol goes down, our immune system is bolstered, and our heart, not just our fluffy heart, right, but our actual heart gets literally stronger. When physical distancing is deemed necessary, as in many districts right now and the decisions that they're making, social and emotional connectedness is even more critical. I'm going to show you a clip right now that I just love, and it's two kids during this pandemic who were asked to get to know each other using some very wonderful questions. So here we go. All right, so let's see if I can get back to my slides here. Just one second. what I'd like you to do is, I know we don't have a chat box, but we do have a question and answer box. And like I said, Janine and Jesse are standing by ready to answer your questions and to interact with you, because we believe interaction is important. And in this format, this is how we can do it. So just in the question box, even if it's not a question, it just be a comment. What struck you about that video? And why are belonging and connection more important now than ever? What do you think about that video? So just take a moment, put that in, and Jesse and Janine will be there to answer. I love this quote by Martin Luther King. He said, "Men hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they're often separated from each other." We are creatures of habit, and we tend to hang out with people and be in the places that are the same as, you know, what we like to see. I like to call it an echo chamber, right? We like to hang out with people who agree with us. But as we move forward, we need to know that it is our job to have kids talk to kids that normally wouldn't talk to each other, to have adults, staff members who normally don't engage with each other, to engage with each other. Whether you're a teacher, a counselor, a leader, you are the broker of relationships. You are the social architect. It is not enough for you to just have a good rapport with your colleagues and you to have a good rapport with students. You need to facilitate the relationships of others. What is belonging exactly? Belonging is that feeling that you are respected and valued in a given context, meaning that it is not a global feeling, belonging. Belonging is walking into one classroom and going, "Oh my gosh, it feels so good in here. I love it." Or one person's office and just going, "It feels good here." It's also walking into another person's office and going, "Wow, I don't feel like I belong here." Or going to a family member's house. And the opposite of belonging is when you walk into somebody's house and you say, "Wow, I can't be myself here. I have to walk on eggshells. I have to, you know, not be who I really am." That is a feeling of not belonging. And belonging is not fluff. It's a matter of life and death. For our ancestors, working together was critical to their survival, right? Gathering food together, hunting together, protecting against enemies and the weather together. If you were ostracized from the community, it meant almost certain death. And the same is true. Our brains are wired for belonging. When we walk into a room and we feel like we don't belong, or we're not even sure if we belong, it actually triggers our amygdala, that little almond-shaped structure in our brain that I was talking about earlier, to go into fight, or freeze, because we're like, do I have to look out for that girl? Is she looking at me funny? Does my teacher like me? What's this guy doing over here? And when we're in that perceived threat, and again, it's perceived, it doesn't have to be real. It's just that we perceive it as threat. We go into survival mode, and in that mode, we cannot engage with our prefrontal cortex, and no good learning can happen. Social pain might be taken lightly, but I'm telling you that social pain activates the exact same area in your brain as physical pain. So if you have a broken leg or a broken heart, the same area of your brain lights up. And I'm a believer that social pain actually resonates more viscerally in the body for longer than physical pain. I know that I've had lots of surgeries and lots of different physical pains, and I can forget them. But the emotional pain, especially of not feeling like I belonged at work, I can still feel that, right? So when we think about belonging, again, it has to start with the adults. So before we can even get to kids, we need to know that belonging is critical for adults on your campus. When adults feel like they don't belong, they're less engaged, they're less productive, they don't like going to work. Sometimes they can even become uncooperative and disruptive. Takes a toll on their body. They suffer from anxiety and depression. But when they feel like they belong at work, they actually can solve problems better. They are able to collaborate better, be more creative and innovative. They have higher performance and, really importantly, more well-being and resilience. So the big idea here I want you to take away is that literally we are wired for belonging. In the question and answer box, I would love for you to just, again, interact with Janine and Jesse during this time to think of a time when you were a student in school, or you were an employee at a workplace and you felt like you didn't belong. How did that impact your performance, either as a student or as an employee? Go ahead and put that in there. I'll keep going, but they'll be interacting with you. So how do we build belonging with colleagues? Well, if we're back in a physical space, you can literally change the furniture around to change the flow of traffic so that more people can engage. Maybe you move a water cooler or you move a coffee pot in an area where it changes the flow of traffic. I know that in my office, when I was an administrator, I had a big round table besides my desk, and I would sit at that round table, and I always had my door open so that people could come in, right, and hang out and talk to each other. It's really important to call people by their name and to pronounce it correctly. If you're unsure, ask again. Lunch roulette is great. That's just like spinning a wheel or pulling a name and having lunch with a different colleague each day or each week, however often you want to do that. You can also do that with students. Make it safe in your environment to ask questions, to share ideas, to make mistakes, and really put in a process where people can share. A lot of times in our staff meetings, the same people always talk. And so you could instead do staff meeting in a circle to make sure that every voice is heard. When we're thinking about doing this virtually, you can do things like a scavenger hunt on Zoom. We just had a professional learning session with Hawaii Department of Ed this last month. We did 3 sessions, 3 2.5-hour sessions with them. And we did Flipgrid, which was amazing, in between sessions, just as kind of a virtual circle. We did scavenger hunt yesterday. We've done check-in forms. You could do dress up or dress down days. For your staff and for students, you could do a morning announcement or a weekly announcement via video so they could still see you. Again, these things are important. When we think of kids, we know from a Harvard study that every child who winds up doing well had at least one committed relationship with a supportive adult. Think about that. Just one adult who truly believed in them. And what's sad is many of our kids don't have that adult. When students feel like they don't belong at school, they're on the lookout. They're searching for clues and cues. Does this person like me? Am I accepted here? Can I be myself here? And while they're looking for those cues, their brain is caught up in survival mode. It can cause anxiety, deplete cognitive resources, make them feel less motivated and engaged. And again, no learning is happening in those moments. We know that brains in pain can't learn. So what does fight, flight, freeze look like in the classroom? Well, it might look like withdrawing or skipping class. You might see if you're doing distance learning, kids not showing up. And we think, oh, maybe it's they're lazy or they don't want to work. But truly, there could be something else. There most likely is something else. Fight, you've seen that before, right? Acting out, exhibiting defiance, screaming, yelling, and freeze, which a lot of people are going through now. It's like just being numb, right? Giving a blank look, unable to do anything. This might be you just sucking into the couch, right? Letting it just numb you. So if you think about your own life in the last couple weeks, when you felt stressed, which F have you gone to? And the Fs I'm talking about are just right here: fight, flight, or freeze. You could put that in the question and answer box if you want. Do you tend to go to fight? Do you tend to go to flight? Do you tend to go to freeze? I was doing a training last week, and somebody asked if wine was freeze or flight, and we determined it was probably both of those things. So that might be where you're at. When we intentionally build belonging for students at school, virtually or in person, students are much more likely to be motivated, engaged, resilient, successful. They have fewer behavioral problems when they feel like they belong, and it boosts their mental health, well-being, and resilience. So how do we do that? Well, in person, again, warmly greet all students, make eye contact. If that eye contact isn't returned though, cute tip, quit taking it personally and get curious. What might that be? It might be something with culture. It might be I'm feeling sad or embarrassed and I don't want to look at you. There could be lots of reasons. We tend to let taking it personally get in the way a little bit. Send home positive letters. Use and pronounce students' names correctly. I can't tell you how important that is. Highlight seemingly irrelevant connections. Oh my gosh, we like the same band. Oh my gosh, I have shoes like that. Oh, my daughter has those shoes. Anything connection that you can make to these kids is relationship building. Supporting belonging through equitable participation. Again, doing things like circles or pair shares where you say who goes first, so different people have different times that they can go first so that everybody gets a voice. and teacher-student dialogue journal. Excuse me. When I was a teacher, I taught English, 13 years, English and history, and drama and video production, all these other little things. But one of the things I did in English is every Tuesday and Thursday, kids wrote in their journals, and every weekend I would write them back. And I had, 150 kids. Those journals, at the end of the year, I told them to go put it in the bottom of their underwear drawer and then look at it again, 5 years later. And I've had kids tell me, and this is a long time ago, that they still have their journals, that they look at what they wrote, they look at how I responded, and it is so important to them. And you can do that with virtual learning too. You could just do it in a Google form or a Google Doc. Building belonging during distance learning with Zoom. In all our sessions that we do for professional learning with district partners, we do Zooms, keep it under 100 so that we could do breakout rooms, because we don't want people to normally just sit and get, right? We want them to participate. You can do, again, announcements and an audio clip. You can do check-in forms. Excuse me. If I could have a person ask a question in the question box saying, can I have the link to the Google Forms? Janine or Jesse will be able to answer you and put that link in there. We have a sample Google form, an elementary and a secondary, that you can take and make your own. But this is an example from Jesse's class at a continuation high school when she asked, how have you been feeling? This is during distance learning in March or April. This is how her kids felt. So as a teacher, she knew how they felt individually. She could easily see a visual of the group of how her kids were feeling. And that has been so powerful. Also on the Google form, she would ask the question, what is one thing you want me to know? And she was amazed. This looks a little, I'm sorry, I'm distracted because the font looks a little off, but when you get this, it should be right on. Some kids saying, I was having a hard time because it was mostly online. So now doing school, this is bringing back these issues. I need a computer. I've been in the hospital for 2 days. Give me more time to finish. Being in your class is way better than staying home every day. I'd like to move through the assignments slowly so I don't have so many assignments to do at one time. So, asking your kids, and I would say leaders, asking your staff, what is one thing you want me to know on a weekly basis, is crucial for belonging. Other Miracle-Gro conditions for belonging, when a teacher uses a first name, when they call kids by names, hey Jesse, hey Janine, hey Sonia, it actually increases peer acceptance. And the reason why is because then people hear Jesse's name over and over. She's no longer that girl with the red hair, or Janine, the girl with the blonde hair, right? That's Jesse, that's Janine. And so the more we can say names, even in a virtual setting, is really important. And also really important is normalizing that people are feeling alone and they're struggling right now. Because I know that's happening globally. There's also when people have transitions from middle to high school or elementary to middle, it's hard to, there's a struggle to fit in during those transitions. And so just normalizing that by saying, hey, I went through that too, and this is how I, went through it, helps. Because what's worse is feeling like you're alone and feeling alone. Another way that teachers set conditions for belonging, this was done actually a few years ago, but a fourth grade class in fourth grade teachers in Corona Norco went to all of their kids' homes that would be coming to them and just put a little sign in their yard. And you can tell that the kids felt very special about that. Perfect for distance learning or for going back. This is from posts in our Facebook group. Again, if you would like to join, we have a Facebook group with over 1,500 educators from all over the globe. If you put your email or just say, I want in, Janine or Jesse can respond with the link to join our Facebook group. But these are from posts from there where Julie Graham not only sent postcards out, but she sent them out to kids' parents and not highlighting academics, but just finding something positive about each kid. And she said that parents were posting on Facebook how they had got this postcard from their son or their daughter's teacher and how much it meant to them. They were showing up at her classroom door with, flowers to thank her for how meaningful that was. Another thing that you can do is an activity called Rose, Thorn, Bud. And in the Google Drive folder that we'd love to share with you, if you just indicate, put your email down, it's in there. But it can be used both with students and staff as a check-in, right at the beginning of class or the beginning of a session, or as an exit ticket after a staff meeting or after a lesson. And the rose is just what is going really well for you, what's blooming, what's a thorn, what's something, a challenge that you're going through, that you're facing, and how might you need help with that. And what's a bud, something that's not quite a rose yet, not bloomed, but something you're looking forward to. There's a lot of positive psychology research around looking forward to things. I have a daily planner. I was just going to pull it out, but that's okay. I have a daily planner, and every day the first 3 things it asks me is, what are 3 things you're grateful for? And the next 3 things are, what are 3 things you're excited about? And so every morning I do that. Why? Because it builds my resilience. Because if I wake up in the morning going, wow, I'm so grateful for this, and I'm excited about this, it frames how I view the whole day. Critical. Another great builder is the 2x10. This is not new. You may have heard of this already, but just 2 minutes a day with a student for 10 days in a row. And having people adopt a student. So at my school, when I was a teacher, we put up a list of all the kids' names, and we each adopted a few kids. Now, they didn't know they were adopted, right? We didn't go up to them and say, hey, I adopted you as my kid. What we did was just make sure that we checked in with those kids. And I can't tell you, as we said in the Harvard study, 1 adult, right? The power of that. One of the other things we like to do, and I did this as a principal, I asked my staff, I gave them 1 month, the first month of school, to print out their roster and write down the spark of every kid, at least 1 spark of every kid that they served. And what I mean by spark is, what are their interests? What makes them, do they love skateboarding? Are they a reader? Do they love doing math? Are they an artist? Are they a musician? What do they love to do? Because in order to get that information, you have to have a conversation with the kid, right? You have to show interest. And so I was sharing about that with a group of educators in Taft Union, and they went back, BVHS went back, and they created a Google Doc. I think this is amazing, and so I would encourage you all to do it. A Google Doc of all of their students, right? And then they have Spark 1, 2, and 3. And so anybody could go in, the secretary, the principal, a teacher, and say, oh, I talked to Janine today, and her spark is music. And then another person could say, oh, I talked to her today too, and she was telling me that she loves swimming. And so they add swimming to the list. And so at any time when you're trying to reach a kid, you could look at this list and go, oh, they really like swimming and music. I'm going to spark a conversation around that, right? And that will really help them feel seen. Also, if you've ever been to one of our trainings before, you know we love circles, morning meetings, community circles, restorative circles, and you can still do circles virtually. They might look a little bit different. You could do a Google circle, and again, we have resources in our Google Drive folder to help you with this. There's some videos on how to do morning meeting just on YouTube, right? And then one of the things that we just did recently with Hawaii, as I mentioned, is in between, we had 3 sessions for 1 session a week for 3 weeks, right? And so in between, we used Flipgrid to ask a circle question, and then people would respond with their video, and others would then reply to their colleagues' videos with a video. And it was, I can't even begin to tell you how extraordinarily wonderful it was. I felt like I knew participants better. They knew each other better. And it was just a really nice way to build that connection. So the big idea here is it doesn't matter what technology you're using. The most important thing is that you're connecting. They want you. So another big idea, adults on campus set the conditions for student belonging. Again, it's not just about your relationships with the students. It's about how you're helping them engage with each other. I want you to just take a minute and just really appreciate yourself, because you are taking big leaps. You've been asked this year to do things that you never thought you would have to do. And teachers are amazing. And counselors and principals and district officers, like they're just responding, taking really big leaps. And so another thing that's really important, and is actually in my daily planner as well, at the bottom to put in each night, is just saying, what went well? You know, I don't know if any of you make to-do lists, but do you ever find that if there's, you know, you're looking it over and you're like, oh, I didn't do that, but wait, I did all these other things. I'm going to add them to the list just so I can check it off. Could say something in the chat box if you do that. I do. So there's a great technique that you can do called the I did that list, right? So not just focusing on what you set out to do, but also, wow, I didn't even have this on my to-do list, but I accomplished this today. So keeping an eye on what went well, and that's really important to do with students too. It's a great thing you can do with students. Why is belonging important? Because in our very connected world of technology connected, we're losing connection. Even though some of us have been quarantined in our house with our loved ones, just because we're there physically present does not mean we're there emotionally present. If you look around the dinner table, sometimes you see everybody on a device not paying attention. When I would travel, so I have a few dogs. These are them, aren't they cute? And when I come home, actually, just even if I go to the store and I come home, they go crazy. They won't leave me alone. And so what I had to do was do what I call the flashlight of attention. So literally, this is going to make me sound like a crazy dog lady, but hashtag authentic. I have to hold their head in my hand and say, "Hi, Kaya, how are you? Did you have a great day today? Baby, how was life for you? Oh, did you take a good poop today? All right, right?" Like, I have to look them in the eye and say their name. Otherwise, they will not stop bothering me. And as I thought about that, I thought, wow, when I was a teacher, it was kind of the same way. There were some kids that I didn't have to hold their head, but I literally had to look them in the eye and say their name, show them that I saw them, give them that moment of flashlight of attention, or they would spend the whole period trying to get my attention in some other way, usually not positive, right? So I would do this with the dogs when I got home, and then I would go over to the table and I'm looking at the mail, looking at the bills, what's going on, and my husband would be like, hello, here I am. And I'd be like, oh my God, that's right, you're there too. And so I realized how easy it is to get caught up in being busy, right? And so now we have a rule too, a flashlight of attention time, no technology, just some talking time. I'll never forget, we do a 4-day mindfulness training for educators, resilience. And this, at the end of day 1, a woman stood in closing circle and said, "I'm going to have to go home and apologize to my family. I don't think I've been present for the last 20 years. She's like, don't get me wrong. I am that parent that I drove them to every sporting event. I was super involved in their life. But as I think back at it now, every time they tried to talk to me, I was grading papers, or I was cooking or chopping or cleaning, and I don't know that I ever just stopped even for a minute or two to just give them a flashlight of attention." So big idea here, people want to be seen and felt, both at our homes and in the workspace and virtually. So where is your flashlight of attention, and how could that shift your relationships if you were able to do that a little bit more? Remember, if you want kids to learn, go to connection before content. And if you want adults to really be engaged, go to connection before their content, right? The second focus area that we're talking about today is adult brain state, because we know it starts with us. Our emotions are contagious. If someone were to yawn, don't do it now, although we can't see you, so I guess it's okay, then we might all yawn, right? And I know you felt emotional contagion when you walked into a staff room and you've been in a really good mood, and then it's like at the staff meeting and you're like, wah, wah, wah. Like all of a sudden your energy shifts. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe you've walked in a really sad mood, and then all of a sudden you found your spirits lifted. That's because emotions are contagious. And they actually did a study on teachers where they measured the stress level of teachers, and then they took saliva samples from all these 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Just imagine the research assistant who got to collect spit from 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. What a great job. And what they found was the higher the stress level of the teacher, the more cortisol in the kid's saliva. So the more stressed out the teacher, the more stressed out the kids. Cortisol is our stress hormone. Now, I put a little chicken and egg on that slide because we don't know which came first, right? But it doesn't really matter if you have a stressed out teacher and you have stressed out kids and you put them in a room together and you lock them together and say, guess what? You can't leave for the next hour. It's like a pressure cooker. So what do? Well, we know that not only brains in pain can't learn, but we can't teach in the best possible way. We can't parent. We can't lead when our brain is in pain. We have to take care of ourselves first, knowing that it impacts how we show up. I love this quote so much. I used to pass it out as a teacher, as an administrator, and I still use it today. So I'd like you to look on while I read it to you. I've come to a frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the room I'm in. It's my personal approach that creates the climate. It's my daily mood that makes the weather. At any time, I possess a tremendous power to make another person's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, and another person humanized or dehumanized. Intentionally or unintentionally, every day, we are showing up. People are watching us, our family, our friends, our colleagues, our students, our families, students' families. So I would suggest to make that an intentional impact, to think about how do you want to show up, knowing that your emotions are contagious, to become the best possible version of you. Because we want to be a thermostat, not a thermometer, right? We're not there to just gauge the temperature and go, wow, these kids are super angry today, or, you know, my coworkers are crabby. We're there to be the thermostat, to influence the temperature of the room, right? So if things are hot, right, we can use our own presence to help calm, to co-regulate. So big idea, our emotions are contagious, we create the climate, and it starts with us. When little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not join their chaos. I like to say sometimes of getting caught up in the tornado, right? The tornado of kids or colleagues getting all worked up. It's our job to help regulate, right? To help calm, not get into the chaos. And that's why emotion regulation is so important. Again, adults first, and then for kids. That emotion skills include the ability to recognize our emotions, to be aware, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling frustrated, and then to understand their causes. Why do I feel this way? Because, you know, if someone was late, do I feel, I feel hurt because I feel like they didn't value my time, right? Label them precisely, express them comfortably, and regulate them effectively. Teachers who have stronger emotion skills have less burnout and greater job satisfaction. A lot of the times they can work more effectively with challenging kids and colleagues because they have those stronger emotional skills. And teachers who work in a school with an administrator with more developed emotion skills tend to experience fewer negative emotions and more positive emotions. Why? Because those emotions are contagious. So ways that we can help our own brain state is by engaging in focused attention practices or mindful moments. We don't want to just have these be something that we give kids. It's important always to start with us. So things we do first. So we did smelling the roses, right? You could also smell the pizza and cool it off, or smell the soup and cool it off. You can do starfish breathing, where you can actually just trace on a piece of paper a starfish, or you see there's a square or a triangle, and just breathing in and breathing out. You can do 5-finger breathing, where you inhale, scrolling up, and then exhale on the down, inhale, exhale. You can do Spider-Man breath, which kids and adults love, right? Where you inhale and you're bringing it in, and then you're shooting out the exhale, right? So there's all kinds of different focused attention practices that can help both adults and kids regulate their emotions. And what that does for us is when chaos is happening all around us, when the winds of change are blowing, right, we're able to remain rooted or remain grounded. Another technique to staying rooted during the storm is getting curious, not furious. Okay, and I love this idea. I read it a few years ago, and I thought, gosh, how do we do that? And it's really about tuning in. What is happening to that in that person's life to cause them to say or do whatever it is that's upsetting me? What's happening within me that's upsetting to me? Because, you know, Janine did it yesterday and I didn't care, but Jessie did it today and it bothered me, right? Why? That's about me, not about them. What's in my control to create a more positive outcome? How would I talk to a friend, a good friend who is having the same situation? So again, just asking those questions, getting curious about ourselves and others to help stay rooted. Another breathing technique that I love so much is just giving yourself grace. So let's just do that together, because we all need a little grace right now. So we're going to do 3 breaths. We're going to do breathing in. I'm going to take an exhale. I do my best. Breathing out. I let go of the rest. Okay, here we go. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Breathing in, I do my best. Breathing out, I let go of the rest. Again, breathing in, I do my best. Breathing out, I let go of the rest. One more time, and this time, since nobody can hear you, make that exhale really verbal. You'll be able to hear me, but here we go. Breathing in, I do my best. Breathing out, I let go of the rest. Right? I have to say that to myself a lot these days. Another thing that pops in or crawls in are our automatic negative thoughts. And these stand in the way of us showing up in the way that we want to. Some of our aunts are comparing ourselves to others, especially via social media. She's so much smarter. How come she's doing all these cool things with her family? How come she's doing all those cool lessons, right? And we get caught up in our head. Or all or nothing thinking. I always get a bad grade. I never get the kids I want in my classroom, right? These kinds of things cause us to get in our own thought tornadoes or thought hole, sometimes we like to call them, and they're not effective. Another thing, along with ants, is to know our buttons. So ants I think of as more internally. Buttons are what are things that kids or colleagues do that fire me up. So maybe when students don't log into remote learning, I respond by thinking, gosh, I'm doing all this work and they don't even care. These darn kids are lazy. That's what I think or feel. I might respond by complaining on social media, complaining to my friends and family. I might respond by stopping putting so much effort into my lessons. But then we need to look at how could I change that response? Maybe I could seek to understand. I could get curious, not furious. Find out what's going on with that student, why they're not logging in. Get their input and their feedback. Okay, so knowing our buttons. When we do those things, we can, well, let's just say shift happens, right? So instead of he's not ready for school, how can we get him ready for school? What do we need to do? How do we need to cultivate the environment so that kids and colleagues can thrive? Another thing that you can do as a grounding exercise or regulatory exercise doesn't involve breath at all. It's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And basically, you just look around the room. So 5 things that you can see. I can see a painting. I can see trees outside. I can see a can of bubbly water right here. I can see a coffee cup. And I can see my daily planner. 4 things I can feel. I can feel the shirt on my that I have on. I can feel the cushion under me. I can feel my dry hands. And I can feel hair tickling my face. 3 things that I can hear. I hear a small whir of the computer. I can hear a gentleman outside my window. And I hear my dog gently snoring underneath me. 2 things I can smell. I can smell my mister, my little aromatherapy diffuser behind me. That's kind of all I can smell. Soap on my hands. 1 thing I can taste, coffee from a sip I took a little while ago. So just that, when we're in that thought hole, we're in that tornado, right? To just stop for a minute and go, I'm going to snap myself out of this by doing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can also look at mindfulness apps. So Calm, most mindfulness apps are free at the very basic level, and then they have premium ones that you can do it. Calm used to offer it free for educators. It's not free right now, but hopefully they'll bring that back. Headspace is currently offering it free for educators, so you can check that out. There's also a Stop, Breathe, Think. And also, if you know people who are unemployed, or Headspace is also giving free access to warehouse employees, teachers, grocery and food delivery workers. So you can recommend that and do that with your whole family. Another option that we've played with a little bit is called Close Gap. And when we did this, Jessie was my student and I was the teacher trying to test it out. And so basically I could say, log in at 8 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it asked, how are you feeling? She picks an emotion. And again, this is a free technology. She picks an emotion, and then it even goes beyond that. So if you're feeling sad, how does that feel in your body? And then it acknowledges the shared humanity, that you're not alone in feeling that way. I love this message. We all feel frustrated sometimes, and that's okay, right? And then it gives suggestions of what you can do. You could do a power pose, you could do some breathing, you could do some journaling, you could make a list, all of these different strategies. And then as the teacher, it actually shows you a screen so that you can track how your kids are feeling so that you will know if you need to reach out to a counselor or a therapist or do some sort of intervention if a kid is checking in that they're not doing well. So the big idea here is that our brain state matters, that colleagues and students will remember who we were, who we are every day, and how we show up, and that we have to bring our best selves to the table. So I'd like to show you one more clip about being that consistent adult. Here we go. So I get teary thinking about that, but that is why we do it, right? That's why belonging is so important. That's why our adult mind safe, so our kids feel like they belong. I just want to remind you that we have a Google Drive folder full of resources to help support you and a toolkit that has hot links to all 5 of the areas in our framework. So if you haven't yet, please put your email address in the chat box, and I will do my best to send that to you before I go to bed tonight, so you'll have it right away. And just know that if you build it, they will come, right? If you build belonging, if you build a safe place, if you build your own presence, the kids will get there. And if it seems overwhelming, know this. How do you change the world? One room at a time. Which room? The one you're in, whether it's your living room, your classroom, or your Zoom room. If you could, I would love to have you put just any kind of affirmation in the box, either an aha, an action, or something that you got out of today's learning. And here's how you can find us. I know we're going to automatically get cut off in about, 30 seconds or something like that, maybe a minute. So if you have any questions, again, you can put them in the chat box. Janine and Jesse, thank you so much for handling that. You can join us in our Facebook group. Again, just put your email in there and we'll send you an email with the information for the Google Drive folder, the toolkit, our Facebook group, and all kinds of ways we want to support you and are so grateful for all the work that you're doing for kids and each other during this really challenging time. Well, we still have 30 seconds. We have 28 seconds. Ooh. I could say something else. Let's see. Let me go in the, let's see, pull up the presenter chat, see if I can see a question. All right. I think we're going. Bye.